right, so I guess we'll begin in the beginning. Bosnia. This is where I was born. However, I did not stay in Bosnia for very long after the birth. It was maybe only a couple of years. I don't remember those first few years. In fact, the only memory I have from um, I suppose it would be the earliest memory that I have from Bosnia was kind of a scary one. My dad was carrying me on his shoulders across this very narrow bridge. It was almost like a log um, uh, with, just very kind of thin bridge that I thought we were certainly going to fall off of and fall into the black murky water. So I remember being very scared, being so high up on my dad's shoulders, and just being scared that we would fall in. But yeah, the early years in Bosnia, I don't really remember. We moved to Croatia. Actually, I do remember one other memory. I think it may have been from Bosnia or it may have been early in Croatia. But my dad, he worked as a miner, so he would work long hours, be gone for sometimes 6 months, 4 to 6 months at a time. To a kid, of course, that's a really long time, and I would forget him. I wouldn't remember him. I wouldn't recognize him when he would come back home. And of course, he would come back home and look to surprise me and look to receive a big old hug from his kid he hasn't seen in forever. And here I am running to mom from this stranger. But yeah, so mom was mainly the one who kind of raised me in those early years. Very strict parenting, I suppose. Just a good kid that would listen, that would not, um, take candy or whatever when we would go to somebody's house. I would be very respectful, and if I was given a little piece of candy, I wouldn't ask for more. Things like that. I was just a good, quiet kid wanting to make a good impression on everybody. I remember my friend who was our next door neighbor. Actually, we lived in the same apartment building. Um, the lady next door was also friends with my mom, and it was her daughter and I that were about the same age and friends, and would hang out together. She was also kind of a city kid, brought up well, didn't curse, was very polite, that type of thing, didn't get into trouble. Her and I would hang out. One time, I remember trying to impress her by eating the. Well, we first went to pick up these snails. Yes, snails, and it sounded disgusting to me too. But I thought, hey, if she likes it, if she thinks they're good, I'm sure I'll like them too. So we went into the woods and we took a couple of containers with us. And early in the morning, the snails would just be out in the woods on the trees, and we'd be picking them up. And once we got a pretty decent amount in each of our containers, we came back, and her mom prepared the nails for us, and then we ate them later. I remember trying to pretend with all my might that I liked these snails, but I thought they were disgusting, and I almost threw up. But in any case, yeah. So that was where we lived. Kind of a very secluded, very sheltered life. I think she was my only friend that I had, and then we ended up moving back to Bosnia at the age of 7 ish, 7, 7.5, somewhere around there, we came back to Bosnia. This was right before the war. Coming back to Bosnia was a rough experience at first. Certainly, we could say it was not easy. The kids all picked on me. These kids were much more ghetto, let's say. Just in their vulgarness, their language, cursing a lot, saying horrible things about my mom and me, and just I didn't never heard anything like this. I didn't know people could be like this. I didn't know what a lot of these words even meant. Um, so I would come back home crying, it's just sad and not knowing what to do. And mom was like, "Well, that's okay, just they'll stop, and you be different, and you continue to, um, do the right thing, and just don't be like them." And eventually, she got tired of that advice because it was not working. They were picking on me even worse. The more they saw that they had an effect, the more they kept doing it until eventually mom was like, "You know what? Just whatever they tell you, tell them right back to them." So eventually that helped. That did work out. But yeah, it was a rough kind of rough transition, moving from Croatia back to Bosnia. But we did, and we were building a house there. In fact, the house was already almost completely built when we moved back. The work had already started on it, and like most Bosnian families, just even Middle Eastern families, they would, if they had a son, let's say, in the family, and he was of age to be married, they would build another house, either just build on to their current house and make an upstairs, let's say, or they would build a whole nother house kind of in the same property. And that would be the son's house and, his wife. And this was the case with my parents. So we moved back to Bosnia, to a little village where my father was from. Um, his dad has spent a lot of time in Germany. So my grandpa spent a lot of time in Germany and built a house down there in Bosnia, and now was building a house for his son as well. And of course, my dad was there helping to make that thing what it was. And we had a well, a water well, which was really cool. I remember them installing that. Um, but yeah, great childhood in Bosnia overall. We played war a lot with slingshots. It was kind of the lower half of the village was one team, and the upper half of the village was another team, and certainly kind of the dangerous game that we played there. But with slingshots, we definitely got hurt here and there. But it was fun overall. Walked to school. Yeah, just got to be outside a lot, building things, making slingshots, bow and arrow, little cards, just having adventures in the woods and exploring. A great way to grow up as a kid, really. Of course, I had a bike. I remember breaking my bike and falling off of it many times, and sledding in the wintertime. Very, very hilly terrain in Bosnia, and so it's definitely great for sledding. Big, big, heavy snowfall winters. Yeah, yeah, it was perfect for that. So yeah, just a great childhood, and then the rumors of the war were brewing. People were starting to flee. Those who had family outside, in Germany or the United States, or other parts of the world where they could escape. They did. A lot of people did, and we had some opportunities to do similar things. However, my dad was convinced that there is no way the United Nations were going to allow um, us to be massacred like this. That this would at most, go for 5 6 months, and it would be they would put a stop to it. Uh, my mom wasn't so sure about that. She definitely had her doubts, but my dad was always certain that we were going to be fine to stay. And yeah, we weren't. We certainly were not. The war began at the age of 7. No, I take that back. 7, 8, maybe. Yeah, about 8 years old is when the war began. I remember finishing first grade just barely, and we had to we had to leave the village. We had to run. We could not defend. We did not have enough soldiers, enough equipment, anything to defend that village. The terrain was not in our favor, and so we had to pull back, and we did. We went to the next village over, which is where my mom was from. So my mom also had a small house in this village um, where they lived, and it's probably one of the oldest house in the village. Kind of an old mud, brick building, mud wall, I should say. Um, Not, doesn't offer a lot of protection against. Well, I guess nothing provides a lot of its protection against artillery or tank shells, which is what we had raining down on us. But yeah, it was all we had. So we moved in there with my grandma and grandpa, and fairly small house, but we were fine. We fit all in there. But yeah, just when the fighting started, when all the shells started falling. In fact, my parents went back. My mom especially went back a few times to our village that we fled initially to get more stuff. Um, in fact, she almost didn't make it. The last time that she went there to take more things, more of our personal belongings, Frigidaire, TV, just more clothes, more supplies that we didn't want to leave to the enemy. So she almost got caught though, and she knew it was dangerous to go back. She knew the risk that she was taking, but she almost got caught. In any case, those supplies certainly did come in handy later. When we did have electricity the very few times, but yeah, the war started, and it was the scariest experience a kid could possibly go through. I suppose one of them. Um, the amount of fighting, the amount of shooting, the amount of explosions going around everywhere is just just enormous, just difficult to put into words. Um, we did flee from that little mud house into a basement. We didn't have a basement in our house, but as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people had left before the war, and so there were a lot of empty houses. And we would either know the people and get permission from them, or later on in the war when a lot of those houses got destroyed and we kept having to move from one to the other. Um, the mayor of the house would the empty house would just find, or the mayor of the village, I should say, would find an empty house from somebody who had um, moved away to Germany or the United States or Canada or elsewhere, and would either have a key or just kick the door down and say, "All right, guys, here's your new place. Enjoy." And we were in one of those basements, and I remember just watching the door, not being able to fall asleep from all the explosions and shooting, and just thinking, okay, any minute now they're gonna break that door down, kick that door down, and torture us. capture us and torture us. That's certainly, you know, um, what would typically happen. And yeah, I think this is one of the ways that I developed this, I guess, scary ability to sleep with my eyes almost halfway open. This is something that my mom would recall and would tell me how scary I looked when when she would catch me sleeping like this. But it would just be from the fear of falling asleep, of not wanting to fall asleep. Just being worried if we were going to survive. That night. But we got used to the war. We all did to a certain degree, but I think we kids almost even more so. After about 6 months to a year, we got desensitized to it. It was still scary. It was still, um, but nothing like it was in the beginning. We just kind of became the new normal, and the bombs falling. It was just not a big deal anymore. Thankfully, we had the geography that we did, which also helped us from the enemy, from the tanks, but also the fruit trees that we had. Being that there was no stores, there was no restaurants during the war. You kind of had to survive however you could, and the fact that on my way to school I could have so many different fruit trees on the way was nice. A lot of those did get picked, and us kids being very good climbers, we certainly became very good climbers, climbing those cherry trees up top where nobody nobody can reach. But yeah, um, walked to school. School would get hit a lot of times. All the windows had sandbags. um, I was a school goalie for my class. Had a lot of fun. Just had a blast. Really growing up. Um, though there were a few really close calls. The one I remember, the two that I remember the most. One is when we got shot at by a machine gun. My mom and I. I think they were mainly shooting at me though. But we had just taken back one of the villages that the enemy had taken early in the war. This was maybe about midway through the war at this point, and our soldiers took that village back just like the day before. And we knew it was dangerous, my mom and I, but we needed some hay for our cow, and so we we got our supplies. These 4 or 5 blankets that would be sewn together with like rope on the edges of the blankets, and we would throw a bunch of hay in the middle, and then just wrap it all up, put it on our backs, and carry it back. Well, I helped my mom with her load when we got to that village. Very hilly terrain, and I help her, and she gets going, and then I lay down and strap myself into my little bundle, and I'm struggling. I'm struggling just to get up on my feet, just to get going. Um, and it takes me a lot longer. My mom that can't see me, she doesn't look back. She's just heading down the trail. I know the way back, but like I said, I'm struggling to get up, so I'm lagging behind her quite a bit at this point. I finally get up and get on that trail and get going after her. When the bullets start whizzing by from the machine gun from the enemy who spotted us. Um, I remember the heat and from the bullets passing by, the smell of the gunpowder, the cracking of the trees and the tree limbs around me, and the ricochets, just a terrifying sound. Thankfully, they missed. And then as soon as I got into the woods, the heavy, thick woods where they could no longer see me, um, they started lobbing mortar shells, and thankfully they were not landing very close to us, but yeah, they were off. But yeah, that was scary indeed. The cow also ended up getting killed. We had this cow, which was such a godsend, such a help throughout the war to have the milk and the cheese and to be able to barter, for eggs or other things with people. And we did that, but the cow um, got hit. The stall got hit by an artillery shell. Um, I remember my mom coming in and just crying, bawling, weeping, could not tell us what happened. We were certain one of our family members had been killed or heavily wounded, but um, mom just couldn't get it out as to tell us what had happened. Um, from her crying, she had pretty much witnessed that cow struggling, for its life right after the explosion. She was riddled with shrapnel. The cow was, and the cow saw my mom when my mom came in to check on her, um, and just was kind of asking for help. But yeah, the soldiers, our soldiers, got to they put the cow out of her misery, and um, all the soldiers had steak that night. But they also gave us a cow in return. They gave us one of their cows that they had just captured from the enemy from that village that they had liberated. So uh, we got a bigger cow than what we had before, and we got to have some steak. So it all ended up being good. But the next time that we had a really really close call. In fact, this was an absolute miracle that we survived. But we were it was just another day that we were under attack, and we are in a two-story house. We being my mom, my sister is about 6 years younger than I, 6 7 years younger, and myself. And my dad is on the front line, but that's not very far away. He could actually um, almost see the house, and he did end up seeing the. He knew it was us. He could hear me screaming. But I'll get to that in a sec. So we're all downstairs, and it's a two-story house that we're in, and my room normally is upstairs. But of course, that being a more dangerous area to be in, I was downstairs with the rest of the family, and the top story gets hit. My room, that whole area upstairs just gets demolished. We're okay. We're downstairs. The houses in Bosnia are built pretty well, built out of brick and everything. And so um, we survived, but we are, of course, shook up and afraid. And Mom certainly thinks that they're going to aim the barrel just a little bit down and take another shot at the house to take out the first floor as well. So she has us flee. Where do we flee? Well, we flee to the closest house, which is in the same yard. Again, um, you'll remember how in Bosnia, the father will make another house for his son when he gets married, and this was the case. The other house was a bit smaller, single-story house, and normally when nothing was going on, when we weren't being attacked, there were about 12 or so soldiers that kind of stayed at that house. Of course, this day we were under attack, and there was this young kid, maybe 16 years old at the time. He answered the door. He was kind of like the mail courier guy. He would help carry some stuff for them and things like that. So he opens the door and sees our house pretty much destroyed and lets us in. And as soon as we come in and sit down on the sofa, he sits down Indian style in front of us, and behind him is a wall with a bunch of furniture and stuff, china, fine china on it. And behind that wall is another room with a window, that's looking directly at the hill where the enemy tank is shooting at us from. And in fact, the tank shell does come in through that window. Excuse me. It comes in through the window, doesn't explode, and then hits the wall directly in front of us, and of course, then does explode. And oh, how to describe that? I mean, just a huge gray, dark explosion, pain, shearing pain in my left arm, in my left hand immediately. And I'm screaming, and all this debris is in my nose, in my mouth, just everywhere. Um, Shearing hot pain in my left, just screaming at the top of my lungs. In fact, screaming so loud that my dad, from the front line, said he could hear me. He knew it was us. He knew it was us that got hit because he heard me scream. I couldn't imagine. Couldn't imagine being a parent, hearing your son, um, yeah, scream in pain like that. That'd be terrifying. But time seemed to kind of slow down. That explosion seemed really, really long. I'm sure it was instantaneous, but just an absolute miracle that we survived. As, as you may know, just a little hand grenade has the ability to kill, especially in a confined, enclosed area like that room. Just a detonation alone, not even getting hit by the shrapnel, but just a detonation alone is able to do internal damage and kill. So this was not just a hand grenade. This was you know 20 times the size of a hand grenade, right? A tank shell that hit, and just the shrapnel, just from the explosion alone, the fact that we survived, and we did all survive. We didn't know what happened to the soldier, that young kid that sat down in front of us. We did not see him after the explosion. We did not know what happened to him. We didn't know if he had made it. It was like 6 months later we find out he'd survived as well. But we were hit. My mom was hit 4 times in the neck, and she had my little sister in her lap, who wasn't hit by shrapnel, thank God, but she was hit with all the debris from the wall and from all that furniture and stuff, and so a lot of it went into her eyes, and her eyes even swelled up. Um, Her eyebrows and her cheekbone basically came together, and she had lost for about a week. She had lost pretty much all vision. I remember Grandma coming to visit us at the hospital, and she's you know not able to see. And Grandma, is that you? You know. But yeah, we get out of the house barefoot, because we a little Bosnian custom is you take off your shoes before you walk into the house, which we had done, and so we run out back barefoot. Um, Kind of cold outside, maybe February time, still a little bit snow on the ground. The sun was out, and it wasn't very cold, but we run out of the house and go down the street to the neighbor's house. We knock on their door, the door of their basement. The lady answers, and she immediately kind of runs away from us. She's really squeamish of the sight of blood, and we were all bloodied up, especially my mom, who had been hit 4 times in the neck by shrapnel. So she was bleeding pretty bad, and she had 2 sons. The lady that opened the door, she had 2 sons, and one of them went to get a car, an ambulance, to take us to the hospital. The other son went to get some medical supplies and was trying to work on us. I think he kind of had given up on my mom because he was trying to wrap my hand up when I'm screaming at him to help my mom and screaming at my mom to keep her eyes open because she kept closing her eyes while she was laying there on the floor. Um, I thought for sure she was getting ready to pass away, and I was trying not to let her. um, Eventually, the other kid that went to get the car comes back, and the car can't pull up to the house because the enemy is still actively shooting in that area from the neighboring hill, and so we had to walk to it. The guy that he helped my mom, and um, we had to walk, I'm sure, a few hundred yards to make it to the car, but eventually we did. We made it to the car, and my sister's crying the whole time. Of course, this is terrifying for her. But as soon as we get into the car and take off, speeding, this is her very first car ride, and she's amazed by it and isn't crying anymore. She's definitely having a new experience there. Her very first car ride. So we get to the hospital, and the poor guy, um, the surgeon, who wasn't really a surgeon, he had to be everything. He had to teach himself how to do a bunch of things. Deliver babies and take out teeth, and um, have all these wounded soldiers to work on, and so he gets to work on us, and mom does survive. They remove the shrapnel from her neck, and a couple weeks later, there's a big infection. She almost dies again, but they're able to have to clean that out and save her life. And yeah, eventually they take out my shrapnel as well, and my sister's eyes open up, even though she still has little red marks in the whites of her eyes from the debris from the brick, the red brick that was in the walls. But yeah, quite a childhood. I guess we could go on, but for now, maybe we'll leave it. We leave it at that. It's quite a long video as is, so we'll continue. Kind of pick up where we left off next time, I suppose. Peace.